Welcome to Business Notes. I'm your host, Diane Bogino. My guest today is Mary Grothe. Mary is a former #1 mid-market B2B sales rep. After selling millions and breaking multiple records, Mary formed House of Revenue, a Denver-based firm of fractional revenue leaders. These revenue leaders currently lead the marketing, sales, customer success, and revenue operations departments for 12 companies nationwide. In the past year, they've helped their second stage growth clients, typically between 2 million and 20 million, double their monthly recurring revenue within 10 months, resulting in an average ROI of 1,454% and an average annual revenue growth eclipsing 3.2 million. Here's Mary to share how she can help your organization be just as successful. Mary, welcome to Business Notes, and thank you for being on the show today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Diane. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to interview you because you are such a success story. And what I'd like for you to do is I want you to tell us your 2-minute professional backstory, if you would. How did you get into the sales profession? And then how did that lead you to becoming a CEO?
It's been quite a journey, and there are other recordings floating around the internet with the long version of this answer. So allow me to give you the 2-minute version. I grew up in Northwest Indiana in the performing arts. I've always loved being on stage, and through an odd series of events, I moved out to Colorado and then unfortunately stumbled pretty badly in my early 20s. I didn't have a lot going for me, and I wasn't in college, wasn't pursuing anything great, but I found an ad for a position, a district sales assistant position with Fortune 1000 company paychecks. I took the job, and within 2 years was promoted into mid-market sales. Within 30 days, I became the #1 rep. And then that started my 5-year journey being in sales. I left and went to go work for one of my clients at the time, one of my payroll clients. And I went on as VP of sales and marketing. They were a startup, very small, doing about 125,000 in annual revenue. There were just 3 of us at the start. I was able to help quadruple the size of that company in 7 months. And that's when I fell in love with scaling companies. I started my first company shortly after that. And I was a business strategist for startups and entrepreneurs for 3 years. Unfortunately, I was young and a rookie entrepreneur. I didn't know how to delegate, price for my services. I was very tired and very broke. I went back to paychecks for 3 years, sold millions, broke records, and had the great fortune of working with my small business partner to sell one of the top 10 largest deals in history in 2017. I took that 6-figure commission check and I started this company. Originally founded under the name of Sales BQ, I became a CEO again. Within 3 years of running the company, we were able to scale to about 2 million in revenue. And at that point, we rebranded as House of Revenue since we were doing so much more than helping build sales departments. And now we holistically scale companies with branding, marketing, sales, customer success, RevOps. I lead a team of 22 people here. We're a Denver-based company. Is that good? Was that 2 minutes?
Well, I wasn't telling you. That's a great story. And you know, Mary, it says a lot about you and how you build relationships because you're able to work with a client and then another business partner. So obviously you're good at building relationships, and you must have a great attitude for people to work with you that way.
Well, it's important to me to have a good attitude. One of my favorite quotes I heard in my early 20s was, "Attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching?" And that really stuck with me to realize that words bring life or death. And I think that your entire aura and energy and being is either going to help someone have a better day or it's going to bring them down. And what power we have as individuals. And that's really been my mantra in living my life. I want other people's days to be better because I was in it. And carrying that with me has really been a North Star. Now, I have bad days. I've had moments that weren't my finest, and there's deep regret usually for those, followed by an apology. But ultimately, if I can ensure that people's experience with me is a positive one that moves their life forward, that's what I aim to achieve.
Great philosophy to have. And so how has the focus shifted in your business, you know, from the first 12 to 18 months to what you do for your clients now?
It was such a whirlwind of a journey. And I think a lot of startup founders can agree with that. there's so much iteration early on, and you have to be agile. You have to listen to the feedback from the clients. You have to figure out your product market fit and what the market is willing to pay for and where you get great results. For us, agility was key in our first 12 to 18 months. I'm a former salesperson. Well, I still am a salesperson, but I had this amazing sales career with Paychex. And I thought, if I could help build out the sales department for, call it 50 or 100 small businesses, to have the infrastructure and the processes and that winning playbook, could I not help these companies double, triple, quadruple their sales? That was the initial thought I had when I started the company 4 years ago. Then, as we went to work, me and a small team, we were acting as fractional VPs of sales and helping these small business owners build out their sales departments. But within 12 to 18 months, we finally started to have data that had accumulated from our work, and we reviewed it. There was a difference in performance, a pretty stark difference in performance between our clients. Those that on their own, who had a good brand and a good marketing engine versus those who didn't. That greatly affected the sales success. Our wake-up call at that point was, if our mission truly in our hearts, the outcome we're trying to get for our clients is doubling and tripling the size of their companies, we can't do it focusing on sales alone. It was 2019. The buyer had changed, and we knew we had to become experts in branding and marketing, bring that into the sales funnel, and then also focus on client success, how we're retaining clients and making sure they expand revenue and they stay on for a long time. And importantly, they become brand advocates. And that's where our services expanded. We actually tripled in size in 2019, employees and revenue. And then as we went into 2020, we launched what we do today, which is this full holistic scale where we go on contract for 12 to 18 months with a client and we rebrand them. We build an inbound marketing engine, and then we help build out that sales department. We build out the customer success, and we build out that technology layer, also known as revenue operations. So they have a real running engine. We double or triple the size, and then we recruit, hire, replace, and get ourselves out of there. But 2020 was a transformative year for us to test that. We got our product market fit. 100% of our clients scaled. In 2021 has been a remarkable journey as we have doubled in size and now the capacity to serve 16 companies in a year. So that's how it transformed and changed. But it just took listening to the customer and being hyper aware of what the data was telling us. And I think that's the biggest advice here for CEOs, especially founder CEOs, is that what you go to market for initially, that pain or problem or challenge you've identified that you can be a solution for in the market, you might need to change that once the data is coming back to you and telling you something different. A lot of founders and CEOs don't change. They dig their heels in the ground and they think this is what the market needs, even when so clearly it's saying something different. And so if you can be agile as that CEO, as that founder, bring forth the innovation and always be adapting to what the market and the buyer want, you'll never not be in demand.
True. Numbers don't lie. What are the most common challenges CEOs need to overcome in order to scale their revenue?
Usually their brand strategy is out of alignment with who their actual buyer is or their ideal buyer. Oftentimes CEOs, when they're looking at scaling revenue, they just default to the sales department over and over and over again. It's, what are we doing on the sales team? Let's increase quotas. Let's recruit more salespeople. Let's bring in a really expensive sales trainer. Well, okay, let's go back to the very beginning, really building off of what I just said. Your brand, the emotional experience your prospective buyers have when they interact with your brand in any channel of marketing or with a salesperson or with an existing client. What is that experience? Companies need to get that brand strategy down, and they can only do that by identifying their perfect ideal customer. Some companies are so broad and they try to be all things to all people. But when you're able to filter down and say, this is my customer, and sometimes there's 4 or 5 versions of that. So we have 4 or 5 ideal customers. Okay, fine. That's an okay number. But your brand strategy has to specifically communicate to those different types of buyers down to the granularity on the website with the copy, the video, the lead magnet that the buyers are experiencing, so they can land on that and say, this company gets me. Well, then the salespeople need to be trained the same way. You can't have a salesperson on a meeting with a buyer and it sounds exactly the same as the last meeting and the meeting before, and they're asking the same 20 questions. And if you have a demo step in the process, the demo is super canned and we're showing the same bells and whistles, buyers won't enjoy that experience because they will have to translate how that is meaningful to their specific scenario. Get centered back around who is the ideal buyer. Are we communicating their language? Does the brand, whether it's on marketing or sales side, create an experience that they can wholeheartedly say, they get me, I need this, my life will be better by investing and buying this product or service. So wrapping that answer is the biggest challenge that CEOs are going to face when scaling their revenue is that most often they'll default to, we need more sales, we need more sales. But they should probably back up and figure out more on the top of funnel of how people are coming in to experience the brand, who the ideal buyer is, and how marketing and sales are working in conjunction together in that funnel. The last thing I have to add here is sometimes your product, your technology, or your service is also outdated. And if you don't focus on innovation, again, this ties back to what I was saying, how our services have evolved greatly in the last 4 years to meet what the market is asking for. If you haven't done that work and you're trying to sell or market an old or stale product or service that the market doesn't actually want, you're not going to go anywhere, and it's going to be a very expensive journey to try to scale. And a lot of people are going to get frustrated along the way.
Absolutely. Keeping up with trends is like job number one sometimes. So for you, what are the biggest obstacles you have to focus on as being a wife, a mom, and a CEO?
I detailed this journey. There's a 17 or 18 minute video on my LinkedIn profile. I had an opportunity to speak at the Leadership Development Day last year, and I shared a longer version of this answer, but it has been a journey. I'm a former high performing salesperson. I was a #1 rep with that Fortune 1000 company. I sold millions, and that didn't happen by me twiddling my thumbs at my desk. It happened because I was the first one in and the last one out. I was intentional with my time. I was all in. I worked so hard, and I worked harder than my peers, which is why I won. But taking that mentality and transitioning myself into the next stage of my life as a wife and a mom was really hard. I had been selfish for years. I was so successful in the business world, I didn't really have an identity other than that. And I didn't step into being a wife and being a mom very, very gracefully. In fact, it took some crashing and burning for me to acknowledge where my true heart was and my priorities needed to be. And thankfully, the pandemic helped me see that, because I went from high performing salesperson to becoming a CEO. And my mentality was, if I'm going to be a high performing CEO, I have to be the first one in, the last one out. I have to set the pace. I have to set the example. I have to be the hardest worker. And with that, oh my goodness, 100-hour work weeks, complete neglect of my family. My baby was so little. He was 14, maybe 15 months when I started the company. And that's a shame. And I put a lot of stress and pressure on my husband. And he is a wonderful, gracious man, very selfless and very supportive of me and my dream. I'm very thankful for the pandemic. It just forced me to be home. I was traveling every week. It forced me to be home. We actually lost 60% of our revenue. And I had a lot of time on my hands, Diane, because people weren't exactly looking for a new provider and spending money. The pipeline completely went away. Half of our clients went away. We lost a couple of employees, and I was grounded, and I had to work from home. And praise the Lord for giving that back to me and giving my family back to me. And I was able at that time to build a relationship for the first time with my son, rebuild that marriage with my husband. And it's been a focal point for me. So now what's the balance? Well, here's what I figured out. I probably wasn't the only one in the company who was feeling that way. I had set such a fast pace and tone. We were all workaholics. We were all neglecting our families. It became this unspoken way of doing business because that's how the CEO was. I employ really amazing hard workers and talented, brilliant people. And there was this unspoken expectation that if I'm working that way, that they needed to work that way. And when I got my life back, I realized I have to rebuild this company on a foundation that operates and makes money without people working 80 hours a week. And we were able to do that. And now that helped restructure our core values, because I take my son to school every day and I pick him up. I'm the CEO of the company. I have 21 people here. Just because I do that doesn't mean that other people shouldn't. If I have a privilege, everyone in this company should have the opportunity to do that. And that's how we've rebuilt our company, that we can be intentional, whole beings, whole selves, be home, be with our significant others, be with our kids, but also be brilliant in the work that we do. Sometimes we falter, sometimes we get into modes and seasons and workloads where we're really pouring in, but we're really great at holding each other accountable and pulling back and being sure that we're intentional and brilliant as a partner at home with a spouse or significant other, a parent, a friend, a daughter, a son, or whoever we are, to all the people that are important to us in our lives.
I'm so happy you mentioned that video, because I stumbled across it because I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and I said, this woman just right out of high school has been just had one success after the other, and she's not even wearing a cape. How does she do this? You know? And that video, I'm going to put the link up if it's okay with you, for people to see that, because it's such an inspiring story. So thank you for bringing that up. I want people to go watch that. Back to advice from you. What advice would you have for the audience as a step one for growing or scaling their revenue?
I think step one, we've mentioned a lot today of where you need to start, but step one at the core, we're talking about the CEO or founder themselves, is to understand the why behind wanting to grow or scale. Growth and scale are two different things. Growth would be very much like a stair-step growth, or very nominal 10% year over year, even stretching to 15 or 20% year over year, but it's very steady. It's usually a very clearly laid out map. It's usually by increasing headcount. Well, if we add another salesperson and another service person, we would get another 500,000 per year. And so you can look at growth. It's a little bit easier to digest and understand, but typically your expenses would grow at the same rate as your revenue. Scaling is when your revenue is growing at a disproportionate level to your expenses. So the hope would be you're bringing in efficiency, you're optimizing your processes, you're diversifying your revenue streams, you're looking at ways that you can add complementary products or services that might be higher margin to offset some things that could be lower margin. But the goal is to get that hockey stick. It's to build the foundation. And then we believe in that research, build, test, optimize, then scale. You've got to be doing it in a nice methodical way. And so it usually is disproportionate. You want to see those profits grow substantially. But anywho, before you do either of those, you have to understand the why behind it, because growing and scaling, it's not for the weak. There's I think a lot of small businesses out there would be referred to as lifestyle businesses, where you grow it to somewhere between 1 and 5 million, and you've built an operation that just works. You as the owner, you make good money, potentially even somewhere between 500,000 to $1 million, potentially 7-figure plus earnings. And you can run that for 20 years. You can run that for 30 years. And it's the life, it's amazing, right? And it feeds your family and it's great. And you'll have some trials, you'll have some challenges over the years, but you're not on this mission to triple, double, and go for this crazy exit in 3 to 4 years. You're not gearing for this multi-million dollar payout and this billion-dollar valuation, and you're out pitching and raising money. There's that type of business. And I think it's important for a CEO and founder to say, who am I and what do I want? We only have so many years on this planet, and it is hard to scale a company. It takes time, energy, effort, investment. And if you're not willing to also experience the consequences of that, then you may need to look at a different path. So I think step number one is, what do you want? And I'm going to wrap this story by telling you something personal. In 2021, we doubled the size of our company So typically we double the size of our clients' companies. They're usually between 2 and 20 million. That's who we work with. And we are not strangers to 2xing that MRR, that monthly recurring revenue, within 10 to 12 months. In fact, we just graduated a client where we achieved that in 6 months. We took them from a 2.8 million to 6.7 million in 6 months. Rapid scale. Well, we ourselves had a vision in January of 21 and said, we want to go for the scale, our own company. We want to double this year. And then we want to look at a certain percentage of growth year over year. I even thought I want to take this to 10 to 13 million with that 3 to 5 million EBITDA. And then I want to sell and I'm going to have this huge payday. Well, guess what? We went through this hellacious journey of scaling this year. It's very hard to double the size of a services business, one that's required of labor and people, FYI. So the technology and easy to scale products here. We did it. We doubled the size of our company, MRR, and people within 9 months from January through September of 21. And it was a scary time with a lot of turmoil, a lot of headaches, a lot of unknowns, navigating ourselves. And through that journey, we determined that we're not going to do it again. And it is not worth compromising the quality of life for all of us in order to reach these crazy numbers. The other realization, Diane, is I'm 38 years old. If I sell this company in 5 years, what the heck am I going to do with my life? I love this job. I love this company and I love our people. I love our clients. I love the work that we do. I've worked my tail off to get here. What in the world would I do? I would probably go and start the same type of company, depending on what my non-compete or whatever would be. And then why? Why would I go through the headache of building again and starting over when I already have something so beautiful? And so it took us going through the scaling journey to realize that maybe we're okay with a $5 million a year business. We finished this year about 3.6, but we're at a run rate of somewhere between 4.5 and 5. I'm done counting. I don't care. I'm just so thankful. I'm so thankful for the provision. I'm so thankful for what has been gifted to us and being a steward of that and just ultimately doing remarkable work and taking care of people, basic foundational principles of life. And we've been given the opportunity to do that. So that would be my number one advice, is get right with what you actually want and look forward into the outcome of what your decisions and desires will actually yield. Try to put yourself in future state and say, is this really what I want, before you embark on the journey and have regrets or realize maybe that wasn't worth it.
A lot to think about. What advice would you give someone who's trying to start a business today?
Hell, I just love entrepreneurs so much. Make sure your heart's in it. I think that there's a lot of ways to make money in this world. And I think the way that is not one way that I'm a fan of is worshiping money, is to do whatever it takes at any cost to compete and to make the money. It's not worth it. My own journey has proved I have made so much money in my life. And some of that money that I earned was at the expense of other people, mostly in my sales career, where I would go make a lot of money and sell it. And then the company had a really rough implementation. They weren't real thrilled with the product. The technology was failing. The service wasn't there. And I just felt so guilty. You know, I hated the money. I felt wrong earning it at someone else's expense. I've seen a lot of companies that just do whatever it takes because their eye is just at the prize of that multi-million-dollar payout and that billion-dollar valuation and being on the NASDAQ or whatever. And I watch them repeatedly do it at the expense of people, mostly, whether it's their internal employees or the clients. And I would say if someone's looking at starting a business, I would just want to give you this brave counsel. You can actually make a lot of money while loving and caring and treating people beautifully. And that there are ways, and sometimes it's not the easiest path, but I'm telling you that money feels so much sweeter when it was earned by actually taking care of people and doing remarkable work, whether through a technology, a product, a service. There are ways to do beautiful and brilliant things in this world and make a lot of money doing it, but having it be heart-centered. So I know that's not for everybody, but it's a hard truth that I've learned, but it's a beautiful truth that I've learned. So someone's looking at starting a company, I just want to give you encouragement that if you have a heartfelt mission and you've identified you have a hobby or a strength or a talent that you really love or a passion, you can turn that into a business. It doesn't have to be this super easy route of, well, I could do it this way, but it might be harder, it might require more capital, or it could take longer to get to this point. I could just do fill in the blank and then I could have. But I'm telling you that quick payout or that easier path to money, you will have more joy and fulfillment along the process. Again, you only live one life. You don't want to look back and say, like a lot of people have, a lot of very successful people will look back and say it wasn't worth it. I got the payout, I got the exit, I got this, but I was never there for my family. I probably wasn't a good person to be around for a long time. We had to do this at the expense of a lot of people's livelihood, and they don't like it and they don't want it that way. So that's my encouragement. Like, you guys are going to do whatever you do with your businesses, but I'm living, walking proof that there's a lot more joy and fulfillment when you actually take care of people along the way. And I promise you, the money comes and it just is so much sweeter.
Mary, you know, you have brought some hard driving advice to the audience today for business, but also a good way to do business. And I agree with you that there is a better way to do business, and it doesn't have to be beating people over the head to take money out of their pocket. So I admire you for that. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you being on the show.
I've loved being here. Thank you again for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for watching Business Notes. We've been speaking with Mary Grothe, CEO of House of Revenue. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, bringing you business ideas you can bank on.